Hi everyone, this is another video about vaccine safety. This is in response to something that was forwarded to me, and there was a individual named James Lyons Weiler who spoke to some people on the courthouse steps in Harrisburg, or what appeared to be the courthouse steps, and he was expressing concern or skepticism about the safety of the COVID vaccines. His specific concerns had to do with something called disease enhancement due to pathogenic priming. So this is a difficult thing to explain, but I'll try to be concise. The idea here is that your body can raise antibodies to a vaccine, but those antibodies do not neutralize the virus. When you're subsequently exposed to the wild type virus, your body doesn't prevent it from causing disease, but rather enhances your response to it. There is precedence for this sort of thing in the scientific literature, but it's somewhat rare. So my response to Dr. Weiler's concern that this might actually happen with the COVID vaccine is that I think we would already know that it's happening. There's been thousands of people that have received the vaccine already as part of a clinical trial, and these types of priming events would have shown themselves already. In other words, if people had received the vaccine and then subsequently gotten infected with COVID, we would be able to follow these cases and analyze them. And to my knowledge, there's been no reports of this priming event happening in the participants of the vaccine studies. The vaccines, in fact, are 90 to 95% effective, meaning that only a very small percentage of people who received the vaccine and then were subsequently exposed to COVID got symptoms or got the disease. Furthermore, among the 95% that did get successfully vaccinated, they have what are called neutralizing antibodies present in their peripheral blood. And the word neutralizing here is important because that means that the antibodies will inactivate the virus. If the patient is exposed to COVID and they have neutralizing antibodies, then the immune system will take care of that infection and clear it from your body. 5% or whatever that small percentage of people are who receive the vaccine but remain susceptible to COVID infection, the question for Dr. Weiler would become, do you see this enhanced disease effect in those patients? And again, I do not see any evidence of that. There's been no reporting of that, and I highly suspect that if there were such phenomena, that would be hard to hide, and we would be hearing stories about patients who were vaccinated that have gotten even sicker than the normal population of COVID patients. I don't know if that Weiler video was released before the results came back from the Moderna and Pfizer trial, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he did not have that information when he spoke in Harrisburg. The second point I wanted to address with respect to the Weiler video was his concern about 21% of vaccine trial participants reporting adverse effects. The adverse effects could be anything from headache, fatigue, nausea, fever. So these are typical for vaccine trials, whether it's for COVID or the flu or other types of vaccines. The 21% statistic doesn't scare me that much because it seems that this is typical for vaccination studies. Both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are going to require 2 injections. So the second injection is typically where the adverse side effects present themselves. It's important to point out that we want the immune system to react to the vaccine. So the presence of those adverse symptoms are actually evidence that your immune system is reacting and producing antibodies to the vaccine. So in a way, if you get a headache or nausea or a fever after you get the second injection, that's probably a good thing in the sense that your immune system is responding and you will produce neutralizing antibodies to the COVID virus. There are some dosing questions that I think that are yet to be answered. In other words, how much vaccine is necessary to generate a level of neutralizing antibodies that's protective. I think we know that there's an inverse correlation between age and the neutralizing antibody levels in the vaccinated patients. And this is somewhat expected because young people tend to ramp up their immune reactions faster than old people. So if you're young, you get that second injection, you spike a fever, that's probably going to happen more often in younger people than the older people. So that's good and bad, right? You want the immune reaction to occur. You want the production of neutralizing antibodies. The older people, on the other hand, the argument could be made that you actually need a higher dose of the vaccine to elicit the same effect in producing neutralizing antibodies. This is a little bit unclear, but again, this addresses the efficacy questions and not the safety questions. In both populations, young and old, there may be some adverse side effects which are short-lived and should resolve themselves pretty quickly. We just don't have long-term data yet for the end result of vaccinations. That's also true for the long-term effects of COVID. We haven't had patients exposed to COVID for more than a year now, so nobody can guarantee that there are no long-term effects to having been vaccinated or to having been exposed to the virus. So obviously this gets back to the risk-benefit question. Would you rather take the risk of having some sort of long-term effects of COVID, the actual disease, or the small chance that there's some specifically bad end result of having been vaccinated? The latter seems very unlikely to me. So I hope this information helps. I have to issue the disclaimer that I'm not a physician, I'm a scientist. I read the literature, so I probably have a different sense of appreciation for the science than most people, and I have a hard time sometimes speaking in layman terms about it, but please feel free to reach out to me if you have other specific questions, and I'll try to address them as time permits. Thank you, and have a happy holiday. I hope everybody's healthy, wealthy, and makes it through to 2021 intact, and I love you all.